the first day on the job. I sit down with my QMate, and he's also my mentor. And he told me, Alex, my first advice to you is that when you're walking around, you should always carry a notebook. I was like, okay, why? Because you look like you're busy. And I was like, where am I? What did I get myself into?
The world is obsessed with fast track success. It's easy to think that people become successful overnight. But let's face it, more often than not, what we see on social media is total BS. I'm here to look past the perception of perfect success and focus on life's detours, perceived mistakes, and even wrong choices, and understand the real road traveled up the career ladder. After all, we're all effing up. Alex Poon is a 3-time VC-backed founder. Most recently, he co-founded CharmVerse, a Web3 community operations platform. In the last 10 years, Alex co-founded AI startups x.ai and Visual Revenue, both which were acquired. Earlier in his career, Alex built software for unmanned aerial vehicles. Alex received his MBA from Columbia Business School. He also holds an MS and BS degree in electrical engineering. Alex is an organizational design nerd, constantly experimenting with new ways to power the future of work. Alex, I'm so happy to have you here. We met just about a decade ago, and I've followed your career on LinkedIn. We were side by side at a career fair at separate booths, and we commiserated and had some laughs that day. So it's good to be in your company today. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And yeah, it's been so long.
Yeah.
Even though it's virtual, it's still good to hang out.
If you think back to high school as a teen, budding adult, thinking about your future, what did you imagine for yourself? Did you have expectations that you'd go to college? Did you have expectations of something you'd do for your career?
Yeah. So I'm originally from Hong Kong. My family moved to the US when I was 8th grade. Nobody went to university in Hong Kong in my family. And so I was one of the first ones. But there was definitely that expectation that I would. And because I think in Hong Kong, I think at the time, this is like 1990, that not everybody go to college. But coming to the US, that's certainly the expected path. I think the question become more like, well, which one and what major and what would I do? I was starting to develop the knowing myself that I'm good at math and science and being Chinese. Engineering seems like the right thing to do. And also my mom worked at a engineering company. So we had talked a lot about being an engineer, and then it's possibly thought of as in my family on taking the engineering route. So I ended up applying for and then studying electrical engineering in college. But I think what's interesting is that I started off in my degree. I worked at a graduate lab in college. I was selected into one of those some small program that you spend a summer before university starts. And I work full time in a lab and stay on campus. And I continue working in that lab. And it's a physics engineering lab. We build new semiconductors. So it's a lab full of PhD students and me. I was working there, and I still my whole college year, I work in this lab. At the same time, I was dating a girl whose dad is a PhD in physics. So I started to really look up to him. I was like, that could be a career, maybe. Maybe I should get my PhD as well. And I distinctly remember taking a course called Engineering Economy. And the professor literally just did a NPV analysis on how much money you're paying in tuition and your loss in income. And he started doing all the math between going to work right after a bachelor degree, master's, and PhD. And the math was staggering that how much money you lose by doing a PhD program. And I remember after that class, I went back to the lab and I was like, dude, what do you expect to make when you graduate your PhD program? And he said the number, and I was comparing that to the sort of expected number of if I graduated my bachelor's degree. And it was like a 10 grand difference, right?
You're like, no, not worth it.
I was like, this is not, right? So it dawned on me that like, the only reason why you really want to do your PhD is definitely not for like necessary career advancement or financial advancement. It's like you really care about deeply about that particular subject.
Yeah.
And I did not have that passion to semiconductor. I think that's
Yeah.
what it comes down to, that I enjoy my time in the lab. So soon after I have a bunch of advanced credit. I ended up graduating in 3 years. I actually saved money on another school.
What a motivator. That's
Yes.
hilarious. I have two follow-up questions. What was it like being the youngest person in the room working in that lab? Was that intimidating?
Yeah, it's very intimidating. So my job actually was for the first few months of just doing whatever the PhD student told me to do. But then, like further along, the lab was donated. It got donated a sputtering machine, which is a giant, this machine that's like the size of a room. And what it does is that it's a fancy word. It shoots laser onto a material, and it gets so hot that it evaporates, and it coats the material onto whatever thing you want to coat. So it's a way to build semiconductors, or basically you oftentimes like melt gold and then like deposit of gold, and gold is actually a very good conductor, so that you make circuits out of it. But the machine doesn't work. So my job for almost all 3 years in the lab was to make that machine work. But all they really gave me was just a pile of instructions, like the different parts of the system. And they're like, yeah, go read and figure out which part is not working. And I would
Wow.
just, deep up that machine, pretty much my whole college career, and then making that work. And then, yes, asking for help whenever possible. And sometimes the physics students are like, why are you here? Why are you asking such basic questions? I was like, I know nothing.
Yeah. Did you say you moved to the US in 8th grade? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Wow. You glossed over that. Yeah, we moved here in 8th grade. That's a pivotal time in your youth. You're about to finish middle school, head into high school, you're full-blown puberty,
Yeah.
developing yourself as a human, and you arrive in the US. You're just like, yeah, we came here. Honest- I don't want to put words to this for you, but what was that transition like moving from one country to another across the globe?
So it is like the worst year of my life. It really was. There is a silver lining, even though there's no silver lining, but this particular one there was. Like, in Hong Kong, English is second language, but it's almost like learning Spanish when you are in the US, right? So you learn Spanish, but you don't really be able to really conduct your studies in Spanish, right? So for me, it's the same as English. So coming here, having to adapt and then we moved to a small town where everybody had grown up since kindergarten with everybody. And there
The
was like
bonds were formed.
and then there's one Chinese student whose family owns the one Chinese restaurant in town or something like that. But of course, he doesn't speak any Chinese. He speaks English. So it's really just me. And I had to learn English and not fall behind in studies, but also trying to fit into the different cultural norms and stuff. And then I very distinctly remember turning to the guy next to me, and I asked him if I can borrow his rubber, because we learn British English in Hong Kong. We don't call it eraser. 8th grade.
Rubber can mean quite a few different things.
A few things. Just fitting it was not easy.
Oof.
It is very difficult. Just day to day and learning and trying to participate in class. But why I say it's the silver lining is that later on I moved to a different high school, and I ended up making a lot of friends. And in the high school, there's actually a much larger Chinese population.
Mm.
But when looking back, like some of my friends who also came from China or other part of Hong Kong, wherever, they end up just sticking to the Chinese community and never actually really learn English. I feel like the basic, but I done that 1 year of intense English training, forcing me to have to learn English and meet people outside of my culture. And that to me, I think it's such a big change, but differentiator when I look back, because some of my friends, and I observe people here and there, particularly in big cities in the US, if you choose to, you can just stick to your stop community of people and
Right.
never go out and never expand yourself. And you can live your life that way. And I'm glad that I didn't go
Yeah.
down that route, even
Mm.
though I suffered through that 1 year of integrating into the society.
Yeah, that's rough. How do you think some of that year has played into your future, that worst year of your life? Are there things that you still struggle with from that transition period that pop up every now and again, or you think it's all but resolved itself?
Yeah, I think what it helped me unlocks, I think, the confidence or idea that I think that I know that I'm adaptive. I can learn a language, can learn a new place, new culture, and like how hard it is to learn a new business, a new tool, a new whatever. I think it actually give me the confidence of just having data behind saying that I actually have done something like that before.
Back to college. You do it in 3 years, record timing, because you're not gonna be a statistic and waste more money. What was it like landing your first job? Was it difficult? And then once in the job, how was it?
I started college 96 and graduating, well, supposed to graduate in 2000, and I
Mm,
graduated in 99, which is like right at the dot com bust, right?
mhm.
But like just before, right? So
Yeah.
like when I was graduating, or just about to, a bunch of my friends are going to like work for startups or like tech is super hot at that particular moment in time. But I was trying to figure out like, what does it mean? Is this really going to last? Or what's the differentiator of being an engineer and like yet another engineer coming out of school? And I thought, like, I think maybe one differentiator is by having more advanced degree. So like I should go study for a master, but I'm not going to pay for a master. So I'm going to look for a place that'll let me study for my master's degree
Mm.
part time. There was multiple offers. One I distinctly remember that I turned down was like from Lucent Technology, which is like a Cisco competitor, right?
Yeah.
And part of it was that like maybe could have been a mistake because it's a big tech company at the time. But I really wanted that master's degree, and they weren't really going to provide that. And they were like, yeah, you're going to focus on developing software and hardware for Lucent. So I ended up picking a defense contractor. It was Lockheed Martin at the time, and then later on gets sold to BAE System. They have a 3 year rotational program as part of the recruitment. Is that like that besides the work, you actually rotate to different divisions the first 2 years. Like every about 6 to 9 months, you go to a different team and learn and trying to figure out what your passion is in the job. And then at the same time, do your master's degree part time.
Sounds rough.
So yeah, so that's what I chose to do, a work full time, but do a master's degree on the side.
Did you
There's
find
some
challenges with that?
particularly looking back, I think as a 20-something-year-old, you have infinite amount of time. Like kids, it's just so much free time.
Yeah, but you don't
So
realize that at the time, do you? You're not thinking, I don't have kids, I have all this time. Was it stressful?
honestly, it was not. But I think partially because it's the defense contractor is really not that demanding of or at least in your hours of a job. I remember the first day on the job, I sit down with my QMate, and he's also my mentor. And he told me, Alex, my first advice to you is that like, when you're walking around, you should always carry a notebook. I was like, okay, why? Because you look like you're busy. And I was like, where am I? What did I get myself
Wow.
into? Yeah, I would never work with a defense contractor again ever. But
The
to
full
put it out
So
there.
then maybe the better question is, if you hadn't been doing the advanced education at the same time, would you have been bored to tears?
I think I would be.
Huh.
I think I would be. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So having the combo kept you engaged and kept you moving, basically.
Yes.
Huh,
Yeah.
that's fascinating. Okay, so you were at BAE for a couple of years, and then you went on to pursue your MBA, more education, at
Yeah.
Columbia. Why did you decide to add some business influence to your already robust education?
Yeah. So I know, just going around collecting degrees. First, yeah,
After
first of all,
after all the math at the PhD, but this math was probably different.
right, exactly. So I think part of it is that feeling of not accomplishing things I want to accomplish. And I just felt stuck. I finished the 3-year rotational program that I have very fond memories of, but like now it's over. And like now I'm just another engineer in the company doing not super challenging work. And I wasn't sure like how to make that change. I think particularly again, back in the old days, there's a lot less information out there, right? Because I think today, like that you can, there's plenty of YouTube and blogs and many other things you can kind of help you on figuring out like what to do or how, and then how to approach doing those things. And I just didn't have the right network or the right information. I think they more, it's more to me, looking back into more information than network. So I just didn't know what to, I know I wanted to change. I needed a change. And one of the more sure way of changing would be applying for a business school degree. But of course, I was doing some research and there's more research around how to transform your career via business school degree. So ended up applying to a business school.
What was it like to transition back to a fully educational environment after you'd been away from that fully educational environment for a while?
I am going to Columbia. So like moving from New Hampshire to New York City, which is a big difference. And it's actually very energizing because it is a group of very ambitious, intelligent people who are looking to do something with their career. And many of them are career changer. So just simply talking to the many people and then having I always take advantage whenever an entrepreneur come to campus, which is a weekly occurrence. I will go to every single one of those lectures or talks. Between just placing myself in that environment, help again just expand my worldview and then expand the ambitions and the information that I wanted or that I didn't know I needed to. So I would say I didn't learn a ton in business school. And I think what Columbia particularly known for is that like every Thursday night there's a happy hour and which is right outside the engineering school. It's always like, so when we were having our happy hours, I look out and some engineering students are coming out of labs, like giving us look from what are these people doing? They party every Thursday and
Yeah.
we don't only party on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So, but it is placing myself in my peers, people who want to do more and who are excited to do more. I think that's actually the most exciting, interesting part of business school.
It looks like about halfway through your MBA, you started a company. Talk to me about that.
I have a pretty decent sense that I want to start my own company even before. And I just, yeah, again, I couldn't really lock down the right idea, people, team, and so on. So I continued on that search when I was in business school. And there was definitely more people who were excited about that. And I can't even remember how I met my co-founder, but somehow we met. But the company was more in research mode. He has the technology and he really needed as a start to someone to help really generate to fund the business. And because of the technology, the best way to produce that funding is through like grant. So I spent a decent amount of my time researching and then like writing grants, which we did get a grant to get the lab going. That's really where I spent most of my time I was in nanotechnology and I have a technical background. I understand the technology and then I can apply more the business side of like how do we create a commercialization plan, what are the grantor are looking for when I write this proposal and so on. But once I've done that though, like then it's actually years of research. So there's really not a place for me to continue work. Not like maybe if I sit around and wait for 3 years, there will be a need for someone to do something that is not deep research in nanotechnology.
It seems like a theme is starting in your career where you're in something and it's sort of fulfilling, but it's not quite the full meal deal. Is that accurate?
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
Like
I,
you're
I
hungry for more.
That's the thing. I feel like I am constantly being hungry for more. I think that's the
Mm.
right way to put it.
Can't help but think about the eighth grader in you, right? You had to do so much in that year, and that set the tone for your life of, well, I overcame this big thing. I had to do 12 different things that year in order to like thrive. And so everything else is just easy breezy. All right, what's next? I need more to keep me occupied. You moved on from that and ended up at Diamond Management and Technology Consultants. Why did you go there and what did that look like?
Still at the time, yeah, I was still had that startup bug, but in this search mode, like couldn't quite find the right thing. So I needed something in between, and I and end up meeting the team at Diamond. And they again, this is you have to turn back the clock, right? This is 2005 during the summer after the first year in business school. So I was looking for an internship, and Diamond, compared to other management consulting firms, is a unique proposition to put technology and management consulting together. It was a differentiator. And that find that to be suitable for me on how do I apply my technical background and passion for it, and then having more
Mm.
business acumen around it. So I ended up interning with Diamond and had a actually a great internship. I enjoyed the people. I enjoyed the challenge that we had, and they made me an offer. And being frugal and caring about money, they also offered to pay for my second year tuition. So that was nice too. And yeah, so I ended up taking the job full time with Diamond after graduation.
How did you find being in the consultant seat versus an operational seat? Did you encounter any struggles with yourselves?
I think a lot of my friends, when after they leave consulting, they would tell you they hate it. Like some really hate it. Never really hate it. I think a lot of the good thing in the sales brochure is true that start people working on generally interesting problem and being someone in your late 20s, early 30s, maybe that you get to work on problems that are probably not available to you if you were just working in a
Sure.
large corporation. What I dislike about it is too much of actually playing it too safe.
Mm.
Because I think something that don't think too much about consulting is that like when you're paying someone, whatever, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars for advice, that advice better be good, right? But what makes advice good is that it pan out.
Mm.
But in order for things to pan out, that means that the probabilities of that thing being real has to be called 90%. To be more specific, so like one of the things that I did at Diamond, I ended up was leading a research group on mobile. And this is like 2008, 2009, right? The iPhone was out already. And it's pretty clear that mobile is going to be a big thing. But we're still taking this position of maybe it is, here's some growth rate of certain thing. I had such a hard time on seeing certain thing being like that I believe in, but can't really act on it because I'm not in the operating. I'm not in the position to take that risk, even though I take that risk all day long. On the side note, I love playing poker. And as I play poker games hands over and over again, if I am 70% on, I've played that hand every single time. I just have to play a lot of those hands. But in consulting, it's like I have to be 90% for me to play that hand.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And I really dislike it. I
Mm.
really dislike not being able to play the hand.
It handicaps you
A lot. I'm saying a lot.
a lot. Why did you end up leaving Diamond?
Throughout the time in Diamond, even though I did not have a lot of free time, but constantly thinking about starting a company again, or continue to be thinking about it, but did not act on it. I've gotten to the point where I feel like I was actually stuck again, that I don't, and I can actually already see, I remember again, I was in the financial practice. I was advising some big credit card company in New York, and like the main partner on the project, and someone they're like, oh, maybe one day you can be like him. So our Diamond's headquarters in Chicago. He lives in California.
Mm.
His other financial client is in California. So this guy spent 2 days in California, 1 day in Chicago, 2 days in New York every week. And I'm just looking at, I don't think that's a life I want to live. And that's like by working hard and doing many things to climb that ladder. That's just not even like what I wanted.
Yeah.
And not to mention again, even the type of not being able to take that bet, pick the bets it drives me crazy to begin with. Again, New York was not the same sort of startup hub that it is today. But it's starting to get heated up. MongoDB is starting, or a little bit further along, Etsy, and many others. Right? Facebook, Google are building larger and larger team in the city. So like more and more meetup and so on. So I end up going to a lot of meetup. And that's where I met my co-founder.
Mm.
And then at the same time, I was advising again this credit card company, and particularly on projects about machine learning. Back then, it's called predictive analytics, and even called like machine learning or AI. And we talk about all these things that we can do to make customer service better by making predictions and so on and so forth. But again, not be able to really place that bet. Like it just some recommendations on like potential use cases that like no one ever implemented, or it finally got implemented maybe like 10 years later.
Yeah, it takes forever.
I was again quite sure that the realm of big data, AI, machine learning is the future of how product should be built, how it would transform businesses and team and so on. And my co-founder felt the same way. He came from an entrepreneurial background and so on. We ended up hitting it off and decided to start a company together with two other co-founders.
And this is in New York still, yes?
This is New York. Yeah.
Yeah.
Visual Revenue is a company that we started.
And talk to me about being a co-founder in New York. The financial crisis has happened. You're starting to see more tech again. What pressures did you feel? What anxieties did you experience as a founder?
A lot. I think so, particularly at the time that like I was married and we were about to have actually when I started the company, I think 2 months before that, we closed on a house in anticipation of a child. There's certainly that financial burden of thinking about life. But my wife is also an engineer. So at least I feel like together, the family, we have that sort of safety net that she enables me to take that risk of, hey, if this thing doesn't work out, we'll go back to become a consultant again, maybe. But yeah, it's certainly a lot of uncertainty around if this thing's going to work. I had never done a startup before. So all these things, again, new thing, completely new, even in a topic that I'm passionate about, but I have to do a ton of learning on how to figure out how to actually build something. And we actually decided, at least in the beginning, we thought that we were going to completely bootstrap the company. So the four founder put in our own capital and we started a company with no outside funding. And we thought that's how we're going to run the whole thing together. And that, of course, also put more pressure on making sure like this.
For sure.
You have to build this, you have to sell this and sell enough of it so it's self-sustainable that we can, build a real business out of it very quickly.
Did you say 4 co-founders? That's a little
A
unusual, no?
little bit unusual, but the visual revenue have 4 co-founders, x.ai have 4 co-founders. So I've done 2 companies with 4 co-founders. Although not all co-founders are equal
Sure.
to be fair. So I think the first company, the co-founder that I met, I think he made the CEO. He also had been the main person driving a lot of the decision making, right? Particularly when it comes to some of the really large decisions. So even though we were co-founders internally, there's a little bit of that difference on how decisions were made.
And what were the differences of visual revenue with the co-founders and your role in particular?
Yeah, so I was in charge of data and analytics in the beginning. So actually, that was the only patent that I got was from the work that I did at Visual Revenue, coming up with the algorithm to actually make predictions of how things we were recommending to in the product. But we had a CTO who was writing, well, all the code, and he ended up leaving, and I ended up taking on the head engineering role in the company. And that was, again, new thing. But yeah, I ended up owning data and engineering technology altogether.
What was that like, taking that on?
It's definitely was a little, uh, uh, again, a ton of learning because there's code at the time, but still I was nowhere near as good of a developer as the CTO or and then although by that point we had 3, I think, or so engineers, 3 or 4 engineers already. So it's not like just me trying to learn the code like with all the other items. So I do have a team to lean on, but still it was learning. AWS was pretty new at the time. We were using AWS. We were using MongoDB, and that's also quite new.
Yeah.
So just dealing with all this new technology that it's have to, again, just learn from scratch sometimes.
Did you find pressure in this idea that, like you said, you weren't the best developer at the time? There's a team underneath you. I have to assume that some of them were pretty well versed and a bit more experienced in the weeds of developing than you were. Did you find pressure in this idea that you were the boss and you should know all the things that everyone does? You soon realize later on in your career that that's just how things are. But when you newly took that position, was that tough? Do you feel like you had to like bolster yourself to look like you knew what you're doing there?
There's definitely some of that, right? It's you do have to make certain call, and sometimes are you really the most knowledgeable person to make that call? Although I think relatively quickly, I just came to accept that, yeah, like you guys know more than I do. But it's about knowing when to call bullshit. And I still feel that is a very important skill to know enough so that someone is not bullshitting you. And sometimes not
Did you learn that one at Columbia, or where did you learn that one?
it's just life is hard enough. And I think everybody has that tendency. And I think I overall have worked with people with all the right intention. But sometimes just you trying to challenge somebody, someone will be like, just don't bother me. I'm going to tell you some silly reasons and so that you get off my back. But when you can actually say that, yeah, I don't think that's real. And I think you also earn respect in that perspective too. And much less likely to be bullshit next time. I actually talking about stress. So like we actually didn't have the best engineering team. Granted, if you actually go back and look at LinkedIn, many of the people who worked in the company and now have done amazing things afterward. They went on to join Google, to join Uber and whatever place. So they all done extremely well. But when they were with us, we didn't have a lot of capital. So we were not paying Google salary.
Yeah.
Then we were not attracting talents with the best track record necessarily. Many of them were green. We took chances on people. But that also means that our system, and we were serving some of the biggest customers. We were a recommendation engine for the newsroom. We were serving Forbes and Comcast, the number 2 and 3 publishers in Brazil, the number 2 in England. Like we're processing a ton of traffic, particularly for a small startup. But that means that we were growing, particularly in the engineering demand, the scale that right now it's much easier to spin up that kind of stuff in AWS. Back then, it's all done by like duct tape and bubble gum with AWS. And the system would go down on a weekly basis.
Mm.
And it had this weird tendency to go down at 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. pretty consistently. Again, I can help fix the problem, but mostly I need my team to fix the problem, and we have some kind of on-call system and so on. But there was like a 6 months period where that I would consistently have to wake up at 2 a.m. just really to wake up the other engineers to look at the problem.
Ugh.
And we'll spend 2-3 hours fixing the problem. To the point where like there's a particular ringtone on my phone that is stress inducing that
Yeah.
I cannot hear at all because like that's this ringtone that like wakes me up.
If you're out and about
And
and you hear it on someone's
I
phone,
hear that
you're
on
like, oh God,
it raised my stress level hearing that tone.
triggering.
It's crazy. It's
Oh,
triggering.
man.
It's truly triggering.
You had started a family. Where are you at with you had a child? How old is that child during this period of sleeplessness at work? Are you also sleeplessness because you have a young child?
Yeah. So he at that time probably 2 years old, 3 years old. He didn't remember it, but like, I did not spend a lot of time with him when he was at that age. I think I was living like just outside of Manhattan, so I have a commute as well, and we're working 6.5 days in a week. And so, yeah, well, I see him maybe in the morning and then like when I come back at night, but sometimes I stay late at work anyway. Actually, my sister is living in the city and every Wednesday we agree that we would stay till at least 10 o'clock at night. So on Wednesdays, oftentimes I would sleep over at my sister's couch just so that I can wake up and go back to work the next morning. That lasted decent amount of time. And also, I think the first year we did that. We did 6.5 days, I think, like the first year. And then we finally cut the Saturday. But I think the Wednesday late night persisted for a long time.
Did that dynamic create tensions in your personal life?
I have a very understanding wife. Although I think part of it is expectation setting, that like she knows that that's the risk that I'm taking. And she was bought in and she knows that that's how hard it needs to be. At least we think that's what it needs to be for that venture to have the higher chance of success.
And Visual Revenue was acquired. I
Yep.
have to assume that turned out to be a good thing. Yes.
It was a very good thing. I think everybody's happy with the acquisition. Yeah.
Yeah. What was it like merging the companies? Were there any challenges with that?
A ton. I mean, I really tried. The product and the business model actually merged really well between the acquirer and us. So almost day one, it was a good integration. But on the people side, it was definitely a lot more difficult. This company is a US-based company, but then the engineering team are all in Israel. And then integrating my team into the company, there's this weird tension that like the New York office is basically all business people. They're all sales, account, and so on. And all the tech team, it's 8-hour time zone difference away, who don't work on Friday, but work on Sunday. And are typically older and more family oriented. So they start the day earlier and then end the day earlier. Versus say in New York, my team are your stereotypical engineer who rolls out of bed at 10 and then but work later in the day. So what that means is between all those things, is that like we have a 1 hour overlap between us and Israel. Try to fit in all the coordinations and meetings and so on and make that all happen. It doesn't work.
Yeah, messy.
Yeah. And not to mention that, just culture differences on we want to move really fast, super scrappy. They were not. For good reasons. I think I have learned a time from how do you build really scale system. Their system didn't go down all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah,
You can make faster decisions, but it comes at a lot of risk.
right. I'm not talking crap. Like they've
Yeah.
done many great things, very impressive. And again, I learned a ton of how do you do scale engineering from them. But yeah, we were trying to move fast and continue to try to do so. And that is just not a good culture fit. Or finding a way to combine those two things, which try hard to make that happen, but it's different.
What led you to ultimately leave visual revenue?
Because of that difference, and I think I was starting to feel, and then which later on it is confirmed that it's hard to really work for someone, particularly if you have started companies and you like it or love it.
Yeah.
It just being a founder just give you such latitude about decision making, going back to the wanting to take those 70% bets. And sometimes it's just hard to come to consensus with other executives around the room. And
Yeah.
yeah.
You're
So,
now
so
having to do things a different way than you've done it for the years prior. And you don't want to adjust necessarily, and they don't want to adjust.
yes, exactly. And then on top of that, just the opportunity, I continued to feel that my AI was going to be even bigger. And we thought that trying to think of what is the next thing going to be. And we really want to be the one to be one of the driving forces behind moving AI forward. Yeah, it was just too exciting of an opportunity to not pursue and to not really take a shot.
Mm.
And we did.
And that's when you launched x.ai. And you said there were 4 co-founders here as well? Yeah.
Yes.
And were any of them the same from visual revenue or all different?
So the CEO is the same. And our CTO, who is actually my current co-founder, was a senior engineer at our first company. Yeah, we worked together, but that was his first time founding the company with us.
You did that x.ai for many years. What different struggles did you experience in creating that company that maybe you didn't or did experience at Visual Revenue?
Visual revenue, x.ai almost a very different beast. From visual revenue, we were ridiculously scrappy. Actually, one thing I didn't talk about is that, so we were around for 2.5 years from starting the company to getting acquired. So in New York City, we never paid $1 rent, ever.
Whoa.
Up to the point where when we got acquired, we were 25 people. So we're in a 25-person team sitting in someone else's office and never pay $1 rent.
That's hilarious. That's a cost savings for
That's a cost
sure.
savings. Yeah.
In New York City, especially. Wow.
And yeah, we ended up raising a small amount of money before getting acquired. But for x.ai, almost right out the gate, we raised actually more money than we ever did at Visual Revenue. And actually, when all said and done, we raised over $40 million in the whole journey. So certainly a big part of it is how do we capture this opportunity? But at the same time, there is significant more both technical risks and market risks, which we knew ahead of time. For visual revenue, we're actually quite sure of how to build a product and decent confidence of the need of the product. But for x.ai, both we're not sure if people would want the product. And then secondly, how to build it at all, because we're building something that's completely new that no one has done before.
And how did your wife feel about you doing it all over again?
First of all, she stopped working. So she did get something out of the deal. So we went on we had a second kid, and we wanted to really spend time, which it was important to me as well, that we have at least one parent can really dedicate their time and attention to the family. She's bought in, definitely. She wanted to make sure that maybe do less of the 6.5 days in the office. And we did do a little bit less this time.
A little bit less.
A little bit less. We kept the late Wednesday, and then we work remotely on the weekend. But at least the in-person, in-office time was reduced.
Yeah, and
And we
that
got a
was
little bit better.
still a different time, right? Remote work is so different now than it was then.
Oh, yes. I think we were hip chat. I think is what we were using.
Ah, uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah, not, we eventually switched over to Slack, but it took a while.
Were there a lot of sleepless nights in x.ai?
Less so, in a sense, partially, I think, because of the capital. And I think some of the challenge is more about great. We try to compete with Google and Facebook of the world hiring data scientists, which is a very difficult task to pretty much the whole life of the company. And yeah, how to build a team to attract talent to build the brand new thing that we're building. That was, it's different kinds of challenge and different kind of stress that is not quite the same.
And you were COO, which
Yeah.
I have to imagine there was some new territory for you. What did that role encompass differently that you hadn't encountered before?
Yeah. So I think the CEO COO relationship very much depends on on the pair. And the way me and Dennis, my co-founder CEO at the time, split up the work is that like he would handle everything that's external facing. I'll
Mhm.
handle everything internal. But internal means that basically the whole company report up into me, like except Dennis and the head of finance. So I spent a lot of time thinking about recruiting, building up management functions, setting our OKRs, and then yes, running not just the engineering and data science team, but also the rest from product to go to market, sales, growth, and so on. So yeah, a lot of new things.
Putting that
Again,
MBA to work.
really to work.
After several years, you transitioned to an advisor role. Why?
Well, I was tired. I was definitely tired. And also the company needed to restructure too. We're burning too much cash and we had to do things a little bit differently. So yeah, I ended up transitioning out and taking on something different.
Was that hard to transition out?
Yeah. When you spend years building something is definitely different. But again, to the point, because I was tired, that I know that I needed to change too. So that makes it a little bit easier, but not be in the business on a day-to-day basis or that working with the people that were there again on a day-to-day. That's quite different.
And your next role was SVP of engineering at AI Cure, and you were not a founder. You're taking a break from that. Why did you decide to go that route versus creating something new?
Yeah. I was tired, but also I was intrigued by two technology changes. One is healthcare. The other one's blockchain. And I thought both could be transformational. And I know nothing about health. So I figure I should go learn. But I'm learning, there's no better learning than doing. So let me go work for a health tech startup and learn how to build software in the health tech industry. So I happened to run into the team at AIQR, met a great CEO, founder, and who liked what I had to say and how I think about the world. And I think we hit it off decently.
You were only there for 11 months. Why so short?
Yeah, they also went through a restructuring, but at the same time, we're not really a good fit. I think back to the point of that, having to work with a team of people that might not feel the same way as you do about the future of how to move certain things. Partially building health software, there's a whole different set of challenges when it comes to like regulations and the FDA and so on and so forth,
Mhm.
which I think people sometimes hide behind regulations and say that's why it's so slow because FDA said so. But then, and I still don't believe that really the FDA said that. But I think yeah, it then becomes like this constant day to day conflict on why can't we do this? And then it's even when the 80-person startup, it feels like I'm working in a 3,000 person startup on how slow we move.
Mhm.
And that's not really for me.
How did that affect you psychologically? that it didn't work out and it was a short tenure?
But I think at that point, probably reaffirming that I should just start another business. That working for someone else, over time, I've evolved into not being a good fit. Some entrepreneur, like actually Dennis, my old co-founder, he never really took a job before. He just always started companies. So
Mm.
someone like him claimed that he just never fit in. But I definitely have. I have worked in
Yeah.
other companies, in some cases in a few years. But I think over time, I've grown into not fitting well with the structure.
You then took on an interim CTO role at Ambulance for a short period, and then you were CEO and co-founder of AI. That was also just over a year. Talk to me about those two experiences. Why so short?
Yeah. So I think ambulance, they just needed some short-term help in figuring out like what to do. So that was that short.
Yeah.
But AI was that we wanted to tackle a problem. We thought there was an opportunity there, and we found customers. So I'm a big believer in needing to stay and having grit and really having staying power and solving certain challenges. But for North Shore, we had multiple customers, but they all use different parts of the software in a totally different manner. I literally could not find a repeat use case from another customer. Then we can say, you know what, this particular use case really resonate with the market that we should like really double down on it. But instead it feels more like we were a custom dev shop that like, oh, you need something, we can build something like that does this, but then no one else wants this thing except you. And I really just ran out of idea that I can believe in that particular domain to try more. So instead of spending more, I love working on my co-founder and we wanted to keep doing what we were doing, but we needed to do something else that is not this.
Was it tough to dissolve that?
We raised a little bit of money, so we just carry the investor group with us. We just told the investor that like, we are doing a new thing now, and you guys just keep all your equity the way you had it. We're pivoting.
Yeah.
I do hate that word, but
Yeah.
it's okay. But we're truly pivoting. Like it's a new business, but same team, right? Like it's me and my co-founder. We were doing that, and now we're doing this.
And that's what became CharmVerse.
That's what became CharmVerse. But CharmVerse itself have gone through a pivot as well. So I was telling you a few years before that, the two technologies that I was really fascinated about is health and the blockchain. And although North Shore was actually not, neither of those things, it was more in productivity and knowledge management. So at the time of needing a pivot, actually I distinctly remember we were working on North Shore and we took a family road trip then ended up in Michigan, from New York to Michigan. And we did camping in northern Michigan for a few days with some of our friends. I distinctly remember I wake up really early, so like just by myself, looking at the lake and thinking about what to do now, kind of thing, and came up with the sort of our first iteration of CharmVerse, which is really applying NFT in a more interesting way, adding a utility to NFT than to just having it be a tradable thing, or just a profile picture that people can brag about. And I thought that was the potential beginning of where blockchain can go. Actually, that's just pretty close to the core belief that I have now in forming CharmVerse to serve token communities that their community to do something, not just a sort of collection of NFTs that they bought. So in a way, the core belief is still there. And I very much am excited about this world that blockchain and web will bring. It'll take some time, but I think we are trending in the right direction in that sense.
So you had an epiphany at the lake.
Yeah. So basically, I came back and I pitched my co-founder. I was like, we're going to do a different thing. Let me tell you about this different thing that I dreamed up.
They're like, okay, Alex, here we go.
Like, sure.
What challenges do you face today?
All things. many things. I think the biggest challenge is that, so in visual revenue particularly, our customer base is very clear that like Forbes has existed for many years. CNN has existed many years. We know we are selling to them. And I can go to LinkedIn, I can find all the head of editorial team, and I can find them, I can like, sell to them. Blockchain communities are very different, very decentralized. They are all over the place. There's really no easy way to find them, not to mention to explain to them why we are a good solution of choice. And then in addition to this, the space itself is both slowly growing, but also evolving themselves, right? So again, if you're an editorial team or if you're a person who can schedule a meeting, I have a very good sense of what your use cases are, and I can build software to serve those use cases. But when the market and the user itself, they're evolving very quickly, if you're building software to serve that, it adds a whole layer of uncertainty, difficulty on what is the final product and what would the final product look like 6 months from now. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges right now.
When it comes to talking about your work with family and friends, do you find they understand what you do? Or do you find you have to break it down in a different way to talk about it? Or do you avoid talking about it?
I like talking about it. I think most of my work is very difficult to explain. I think the easiest one was x.ai. It's like scheduling meetings, but before you have a personal assistant, and now you have an AI version of that.
Yeah.
That's sort of the easiest one. But like visual revenue, B2B software for a very specific industry and specific job, or CharmVerse, where if someone had never think about blockchains and Web3 before, all they know is I heard Bitcoin is up or down, or are you buying or selling Bitcoin? And like that is so far from what we are actually doing. It takes a while to get the fundamental aligned before I can tell you what I'm actually building. So you get me, but I'm getting better at it. But I do talking about it. I like my work,
Yeah.
but it's not easy.
Looking back at your career, what do you see as the low point?
It is that time toward the end of consulting where I really feel, but don't get me wrong, it's very first world problem that like we're making a good salary and so on. We have a nice home and family, but I really felt stuck. I felt like I meant to do more, but I don't know what that more is. And I think that was very frustrating for months on like really want to do something different, but not different for something different, same,
Yeah.
more.
Mm.
Yeah.
If you could go back and speak to your sub 20-year-old self, maybe even the eighth grader, what advice would you give?
I think it's similar to the advice I give people now too. It just start, just go do things. Because I think analysis can only take you so far. And there's some special power in when you are doing a thing 100% of your time and your attention. It opens up the way you think about that thing. And then you openly broadcast that to the world, and the world finds you somehow. And all those things sometimes might not feel like or seem like anything, but I think they add up over time. That people, oh, you're doing something in blockchain. I have a friend that's doing something in blockchain that you guys should talk. It will not happen if you're just quietly at night Googling about like, how do I build this thing? Really taking that step in doing it drastically increase your chance of success. I think someone talk about this is a version of creating your own luck. That you can't win a lottery ticket if you don't buy the ticket. You have to at least take the activity to buy the ticket.
Back to your risk self.
Yes, you have to put the money, you have to put the chips in the middle,
Yeah.
play the hand.
I want to jump into rapid fire. How do you define success?
Oh boy. For me, it's fulfilling perhaps this void that I have of wanting more. And it doesn't have to be money, but I think it's this sense of accomplishment and things that doing what I want to do and having that freedom.
Mm. What was your dream job as a child?
To be an engineer, although I guess I wasn't sure what I was really looking for.
Mm. What's your path not taken?
A professional poker player, there was a split moment in life that I was like, maybe I should go do that.
There's still time, Alex.
There's still time, but I've come to the conclusion that's not the path that I wanted to. But I think I could have taken it.
What 3 words would you use to describe your career?
Adventurous, fun, passion.
What's an item on your desk that you can't live without?
My phone.
What company on your resume turns the most head?
X.ai.
Mm.
We'll change it so that'll be CharmVerse, but yeah.
I'd like you to label 3 of your jobs. Love it, ultimate fun, skip it.
I would say love it for all the company founding that I did. We'll continue to do them. And none of them are ultimate fun. But I would say, consulting is.
Thank you so much for your time. This was awesome. Thank you for sharing your story. It was great to chat with you.
It's a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Effing Up. I'm your host, Deanne Reiner. If you enjoyed today's episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe on the platform you use to listen to podcasts. Share Effing Up with others, post about it on social media, and/or leave a rating and review. Until next time, count your perceived failures as part of your path to success. After all, we're all effing up.